Hello everyone and welcome back. This is the second lecture in part 1 of our lecture series on the foundations of bioethics. In the first lecture, we focused on some core definitions: ethics, moral conflict, and bioethics. Today we're going to build on these foundations by exploring how people develop ethical beliefs and how those beliefs shape the way we judge right and wrong. Specifically, we'll be talking about ethical theories, ethical frameworks, and worldviews, and why understanding your own framework is just as important as understanding anyone else's. After viewing this lecture, you should be able to compare and contrast ethical theories and ethical frameworks, explain how each of ultimate reality, human nature, and the role of God relate to the development of an ethical framework, and discuss how your worldview impacts your ethical framework. Let's begin with a few clarifying terms. An ethical theory is a systematic way of deciding what is right or wrong. Ethical theories give us principles, rules, or guidelines that help us evaluate moral situations. Examples include theories that focus on consequences, duties, rights, or character. An ethical framework, on the other hand, is broader and more personal. It is the underlying set of beliefs, assumptions, and values that you bring with you when you apply an ethical theory or when you make moral decisions in everyday life. In other words, ethical theories are tools. Ethical frameworks are the foundations that shape which tools make sense to you and why. Before you can critically evaluate any ethical theory, it is important to understand the framework from which you approach ethical questions. We already know from the last lecture that moral conflict exists because people don't always agree on what is right and what is wrong. Ethical frameworks help explain why those disagreements happen. Each person, whether they realize it or not, has a set of foundational beliefs about how the world works. These beliefs shape how we interpret ethical problems and how persuasive we find certain arguments. For the purposes of this course, we will focus on 3 foundational questions that strongly influence ethical frameworks. What is ultimate reality? What is human nature? And what role, if any, does God or a higher authority play in ethics? As we move through the course, we will return to these questions repeatedly as we examine specific ethical theories and real-world bioethical dilemmas. The first foundational question concerns ultimate reality. Even though we all live in the same physical world, people have very different ways of understanding what that world means. Some view the universe as a product of random natural processes. Others believe it is the purposeful creation of a divine or intentional power. Still, others combine elements of both views. This matters ethically because it raises an important question: where do right and wrong come from? This is not the same as asking how we decide what is right or wrong. Instead, this question is asking about the origin of moral values. Are moral truths built into the structure of reality? Do they come from a divine source? Are they created by human societies? Or are they the result of biology, evolution, or social agreement? Your answer, whether explicit or implicit, will influence how you understand moral authority. The second foundational question is about human nature. Human beings share many characteristics with animals. We have biological needs, we reproduce, and we are governed by physical laws. In medicine, animal and human biology even overlaps in ways that allow for shared treatments and research. And yet, we treat humans differently than animals in moral terms. For example, if a pet damages a neighbor's property, we don't usually consider the animal morally responsible in the same way we would another human. We view humans as moral agents, beings who can be praised or blamed for their actions. This raises important ethical questions. What makes humans morally different? Is it our ability to reason? Is it our freedom to choose? Our emotional or relational capacities? Our spiritual or reflective awareness? Different answers to these questions lead to very different ethical theories. Ethicists disagree about many things, but there is one point of near universal agreement. Human beings do not always do what they should do. If humans always acted rightly, there would be no need for ethics. Ethics exists precisely because we experience conflict, failure, and moral uncertainty. Where ethicists disagree is why this problem exists. Is it a problem of a lack of knowledge, a failure of rational thinking, social systems and structures, human selfishness, weakness, something deeper about human nature itself? How an ethical theory explains this problem and proposes solutions is one of the main ways it distinguishes itself from other theories. The third foundational question asks whether God, or any higher authority, plays a role in ethics. Some ethical frameworks argue that moral values depend on a divine source and that ethics cannot be understood without reference to God. Other frameworks argue that ethics must remain independent of religious belief in order to apply across cultures and belief systems. Some thinkers try to take a middle approach, where belief in God informs ethical reasoning without being required for it. There is no expectation in this course that students share or reject any particular belief. What matters is that you understand how different answers to this question shape ethical theories and ethical disagreements. Your foundational beliefs come together in what we call a worldview. A worldview is your set of beliefs and assumptions about how the world fits together. This includes, but is not limited to, your beliefs about reality, human nature, morality, meaning, and responsibility. Your worldview is shaped by many factors: your culture and upbringing, your education, your personal and professional experiences, your religious, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs. Whether you are fully aware of it or not, your worldview influences how you interpret ethical dilemmas and how convincing you find different ethical arguments. Here's the most important takeaway from today's lecture. You are already an ethicist. Every time you make a decision that affects yourself or others, you are engaging in ethical reasoning. This course is not going to be about telling you what to think. It's about helping you think more clearly, consistently, and responsibly. As we move into ethical theories and real-world bioethical cases, your goal is not to abandon your worldview, but rather to understand it better, to recognize its strengths and limits, to learn how to engage thoughtfully with perspectives different from your own. That skill, ethical reflection, and across differences is one of the most valuable outcomes of this course. In the next lecture, we will continue our focus on the three main questions of bioethics as preparation for digging into ethical theories in an upcoming lecture series. As you prepare, I encourage you to reflect on what assumptions you bring into ethical discussions and where those assumptions come from.